It being called to order, I'd like to have approval of, or ask for approval of our last minutes.
So moved.
Proper motion and second. Any additions, deletions, changes that need to be made? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Our first resolution is a resolution appropriating $75,000 additional dollars from the General Purpose School Fund unappropriated fund balance for SRO officers.
Second.
Proper motion and second. Do we have any questions, Dr. Looney, regarding this, or Leslie, any comments that you'd like to make regarding the SROs?
Okay, this is for, last year, we came for a budget amendment at the end of the year, and it was during the budget process, so I wasn't able to adjust the current year budget for that, so this is the same thing.
Okay.
Just to get enough money in there to reimburse the county.
All right.
I would like to
Any
make an additional,
questions?
if I can make an additional comment, this
Yes,
is
sir.
a little bit off track, but if I don't do it now, I won't get a chance to do it. I want to commend the sheriff and his deputies for the way they handled the crisis that impacted the school district over the weekend. Sheriff, I don't see you, but thank you so much for your cooperation, your support, and putting our kids and our communities first. So I just wanted to say thank you publicly.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question for Dr. Looney. It mentions in the resolution that the amount of the funding from the state continues to decrease each year. Are we anticipating that to be the same this year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have any idea from the state as far as how much that decrease is going to be? Or do you have an estimate as far as what that may be?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? If not, all in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Resolution number 313-5, resolution authorizing $200,000 from General Purpose School Fund balance for roof repairs at Ravenwood High School. Do we have a motion? Proper motion and second.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the motion and second.
Mr. Barnwell.
Burton, Bob.
Okay. Dr. Looney, will have any comment in regard to this?
No, sir, not unless you have questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Yes.
Because we'll probably have additional expenses by the end of the year. We're right on our mark right now. And so if there's any additional, I need to make sure I have some money at the end of the year if there's any other incidentals. Because if a school calls in and something's been stolen or something, we have to pay for it out of that line item. So I have to make sure I have enough money to finish out the end of the year.
The $140,000 was the quote for the roof repairs and some of the billing that we've gotten for the work thus far. We're not sure that we've been invoiced for everything just yet. And as Mrs. Holman has said, that's essentially an insurance recovery line. And so if there's any other incidents that happen this year, it would need to come out of that line. And rather than nickel and dime in the Education Commission, we'd like to get it all at one shot.
Commissioner.
I had a question regarding the, did I understand that it's $100,000 for the first incident on your insurance? Is that what this is
Well,
saying?
we don't have insurance. As you know, we're self-insured. So the first $100,000 comes from the board's
From the-
account.
Okay,
And then it comes from the self-insured account thereafter.
okay.
Do we have any additional questions, Commissioner?
Dr. Looney, if the full $200,000 is not used, I'm assuming it rolls back into the unappropriated fund balance?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any additional questions? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Resolution 313-6, resolution amending the 2012-2013 general purpose school budget, $255,500 for additional special education expenses from unappropriated fund balance. Proper motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Barnwell, second. Okay. Dr. Looney, any comments that you'd like to make?
No, so this one's self-explanatory. Unless you have questions, we're good.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Resolution number 3137, resolution transferring funds between major categories for certain salary accounts in the 2012-2013 General Purpose School Fund. Do we have a motion? Proper motion and second. Do we have any comments, Dr. Looney, or do we have questions from the committee?
Well, my comment would be nobody's getting a pay raise out of this. We're just trying to align the accounts to make sure that it's taken care of properly and that we've been as transparent as we feel like we need to be with y'all.
Okay. Any questions? If not, those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Our last resolution, resolution number 1310, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Williamson County Board of Education on behalf of Williamson County Schools for cooperation and provising of school resource officers. Proper motion and a second. Do we have any questions? I think we had a good general explanation, and it did pass the Law Enforcement Public Safety Committee 7-0, I believe. Is that right, Ms. Tank? Okay, any questions regarding this? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Passes unanimously. Okay. We're going to take just a few minutes. We need to get everything set up. And what?
My apologies. I did have another question regarding something that wasn't under consideration today. Is this an appropriate time to do that?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Looney, if you can, I've received a couple of emails regarding teachers from outside of the county with children that they are wanting to attend within the county. I understand there's tuition, if you will, that is that they need to pay for those out-of-county students. My understanding was the board did take that under consideration. The school board did last week. Can you update us on that? And that's the first part of the question. The second one is obviously, how do we look with your general fund balance?
I'll have Mrs. Holman answer the latter part of your question, and then I'll speak to the tuition charge for employees.
Thank you.
We're currently almost $3 million into our 3% of $7,379,348.
So does that mean we're in good shape?
It's the closest we've been in a long, long time.
Okay.
I mean, I don't like being there, but we're doing the best we can.
Well, and I need to add a comment to that. The board will soon begin deliberating on the budget proposal that my office will submit to them, and I think it's a fair statement to say that we are not going to be in the same financial position we were in last year. We won't have enough money to fund the budget completely out of fund balance.
You will not.
No, sir.
Do you have an idea of how short we're looking at this time?
Depends on what revenues do.
Okay. And then for the second part, Dr. Looney?
Well, thank you for your question. The board has not taken action on it. There's a long history on that particular topic. The history actually goes back to this body, the full county commission. There was some dialogue early on. The board, I believe the Board of Education was considering action to eliminate a tuition charge for employees in our district, specifically professional employees in our district that lived out of county having kids, wanting to bring their kids to the district for schooling purposes. The county commission did not, from what I understand, receive that information very well. The school board retracted what they were, or rethought their position, and since that time, and I understand that's about 10 years old, Since that time, we have been charging our professional teachers a family rate for bringing their kids. That family rate represents the local tax share only. It doesn't represent the state tax share. And the proposal currently is for it to be about $3,900 and some change for the upcoming year. We have just under, if I remember correctly, just under 100 students in the district whose parents work in our district as teachers and or administrators. We are actually doing a survey to see if we opened it up further and didn't charge tuition, how many additional students we would pick up in the district. Obviously, it's a pretty complex issue. You want to do the right thing by your employees. It is a great recruitment tool, but at the same time, it does have a financial impact on the school district and ultimately the county commission. So I suspect you will have an opportunity to weigh in on that as we begin to address the financial impact of such an action.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any other questions that the committee might like to ask prior to getting into the other part of our meeting?
Do we want to close this meeting so that we can
Yes, we will. I do have a motion to adjourn this committee.
adjourn?
Second.
Second, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. This committee is adjourned, and we'll move in then to the second part of our committee or the meeting. We were asked if the Education Committee would allow have some speakers come in regard to vouchers and charter schools. We have asked that to take place tonight. We have two speakers that will be introduced by Mayor Anderson. And then if there are any board members or school board members that would like to ask questions, we'll do that at the end of the presentations. But we will not have any participation from any of the audience other than the school board or county commissioners. Mayor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to encourage those county commissioners that are in attendance tonight to come on up and come at the table up here, if you would. There's notebooks up here, and there's some information if you'd like to, as well as the school board. There should be enough room up here, so don't feel bashful, because when there's some questions, you're okay, Dr. Looney. They're not here. And any of those school board members that like to journey up, you certainly can too, because at the end of this presentation, as Chairman has said, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. As they're settling into their group, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to kind of go over how we got to this point. I think there's some information that's been floating out there that needs to be disseminated from this microphone as they're preparing their presentations. This was a result of our county commissioners asking for more information from our office and through the process we go through to get ourselves educated on the issues being brought up tonight. In no way did we cherry pick or ask any one particular group. We picked the ones that we knew, or we called other people that simply were offering to come up tonight. This is not to be a debate. It is not to be a slam any of them. I would hope all of these people that are presenting tonight would do it in a way that's professional and answer your questions, and I'm sure you're going to have plenty of questions, and they're going to be doing it in a manner that they represent their individual group. I suspect in the order, and I would like to introduce these people, unless someone tells me any different, the order that we will go in will be to have the following people present. And let me introduce them first. First of all, you got one more announcement? Go ahead.
Just that we want to allow 12 or 15 minutes to each topic and no more than that. We'll need to stay with that very strictly, so we'd appreciate it if you would limit your comments and presentations to the 12 to 15 minutes.
And I know that it is probably a little awkward for some people to be doing this, but I appreciate very much all of these people doing it, because you can't go wrong with education and trying to learn more about what's going on, even though the county commission as a whole this is, be a state issue, and how they vote, then we'll have to figure out how to implement these. So with that being said, and in mind, if you would, just, when I call your name, please stand so that we can, and I'm going to read these kind of slowly so that Linda can get them recorded. I guess, Doug, you terminated the meeting. Do you want us to continue taking minutes? You don't want any minutes taken? Okay. Because y'all have terminated the Education Committee, and I'll send Linda on home, if that's okay with you folks.
It's being televised anyway, so you have to.
Well, it's not it's television, but Linda, if you want to stay, feel free to stay. Otherwise, you can go home. They've terminated. I'm sure you'd like to go home.
You need to tell them that the minute taking is official minutes, not television.
I am going to call
Hold on a minute, Linda.
I'm going to call the committee back into session. I think I'm sorry, Linda, but I think that'd be the best overall.
The law is real specific on that. Your minute taking is the official document, not necessarily television and things like that.
Sorry, Linda.
So you're back, Linda, you're back working again. Tonight, we have with us from the Tennessee Federation for Children, and their initials are TFC, Lee Barfield. Lee, would you stand? He's a board member and a lawyer. Trey Moore with the Beacon Center. Is Mark here, Mark Gill? He is also a board member from the Tennessee Federation for Children. And then we have,
Well, they're not reading it.
okay,
We got one more coming.
yeah, one more coming. And then, of course, Dr. Looney and the comments that he would make, he certainly, I think all of you know him, he doesn't have to stand. All right, with that being said, the parameters have been laid out, and Mr. Barfield, if you would, come up to the microphone, or is that the first one we've got on the screen?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
That's good.
I think the screens are working. They're over your head to the side. It's a little awkward for you to have them to your back, Mr. Barfield, but that's kind of the way we do things here. And,
Awkward.
a little awkward. But we appreciate you coming down tonight. Hold your remarks to 10 to 12 minutes. We're going to put a clock on you. And when we wind it down, either the chair or myself will kind of tell you to start wrapping it up about 1 minute into it, and then allow us some questions at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Chairman and members of the Education Committee. I'm Lee Barfield. I'm a lawyer in Nashville, and in this situation, I'm just a volunteer helping out, trying to help the kids in Tennessee. We represent the Tennessee Federation for Children, which is a Tennessee affiliate of some national organizations. It's called the American Federation for Children, and you can go online and check them out. They have been involved in choice education scholarships in 32 states over the last 20 years or so, and they've given money, support, and expertise. I'm not an expert like Dr. Looney is, but the AFC people are. They're educators from around the country. They've been involved in all of this, and they've been tremendously helpful in helping us with this effort for scholarships in Tennessee. We believe scholarships in Tennessee, the time has come for them. We think they will help Williamson County, and we think it'll help all the other counties in the state of Tennessee. I want to begin by commending Williamson County being number one. Y'all are top, number one, best in the state, and we want every county to be as good as you are. Let me give you two parts to this. I want to give you just a brief history, quicker, since I got the clock on me than perhaps I would take otherwise. And then my colleague Trey Moore from the Beacon Center, who's a part of our coalition, we're going to run through a budget analysis with you all that I think you will find of some interest. There are an extensive number of voucher programs going on in a variety of different states. This slide kind of summarizes those. There are 18 voucher programs in 12 states. In Washington, D.C., there are also educational scholarship programs, tax credit scholarship programs, and other kinds of choice programs. In total, there are some 32 programs in 16 or 17 states. The number of kids that are involved in using scholarships and so forth, and the, good grief, I can't read the heading. You got the heading off on this thing, Trey? That's all right, I'll see if, yeah, this is the number of programs that have grown. So you can see from 2 programs up to 39 programs, so, and particularly since 2006, if you can take a look at 2006, or about 18 programs, they've doubled dramatically over the last 6 years. So choice scholarships, choice education choice is a coming idea, and we think it's ready for Tennessee. You can also see on the children that are using these across the country. There's some 250,000 children that are on these, what we call opportunity scholarships. Vouchers have a kind of a toxic name, you know, so a lot of people don't like those. We call them what they are. We call them opportunity scholarships. So how many people are there? 250,000 kids around the country that are currently on these scholarships. Are they achieving more? What are scholarships doing? The best report on this comes out of the Friedman Foundation, who's a member of our coalition, and you can see they have studied results of academic performance in Milwaukee and Chicago, in Charlotte and D.C., New York and Dayton, Ohio, and positive effect on all of them, all students in some areas, some students in the other. One study showed no visible effect, but the important thing is there was no negative effect on the children in any of these programs. What about public schools? Do they react to this? Absolutely they do. There have been a number of studies on that, and you can see again a quick reaction here. The positive effect on public schools has been studied in Milwaukee, Florida, and other states. In the District of Columbia, there was no visible effect in the District of Columbia, but again, no negative effect. So the bottom line is these choice scholarships, very popular with parents, very good around the country. They help the children, and they also help the public schools, because the public schools do better when there's good competition that encourages them to do better. What about this? Are the states saving any money with these scholarship programs? The answer to that is, you would think maybe no, they aren't, but in fact they are. In Florida, they've saved some $38 million. In Milwaukee, $46 million. Indiana, in 1 year, the state of Indiana saved $4 million, and nationwide, some $422 million had been saved by the states. Now, how in the world do the states save money on these scholarship programs? We'll tell you about that in just a minute, because we think the county, Williamson County, if you engaged in this program, Williamson County would save money as well, and we'll tell you how we think you can do that. One of the important factors, and there have been 2 states that have adopted these scholarships in the last couple of years. Senate Governor Mitch Daniels in Indiana adopted them, and Governor Bobby Jindal down in Louisiana. Those are the 2 most recent states. And the state of Florida, Governor Jeb Bush, pushed choice scholarships in Florida with dramatic impact. And that's the longest. I think the results are this in Florida. Florida at one point was 29 among the states in their rankings on their academic programs. And after all of these choice scholarships were going, Florida moved up to number 6 in the ranking. That's something that caught all of our attention, because frankly, most of us who are in this effort are motivated by the fact that we got to do something about the academic performance of our kids in public schools. We've been number 46, 45, 47, 49, or something like that for the last 40 years. Every governor has tried to do something about it, and nothing has worked. It's time for us to get started, and we think this may be a part of the solution. There's no silver bullet. This is not the only answer. We got to have better teachers, and there's a lot of other things, but this is certainly one that's worked well. What's happened in Indiana? The number of voucher recipients and scholarship recipients have grown dramatically. From the first year, about 4,000 kids across the state, to about 9,000 in the second year. So they're very popular. People move in this direction very quickly. Who's using the vouchers? The Indiana data shows us that most of the vouchers are used by children in the metropolitan areas. About 18% of the voucher users are in the suburban areas, and about 16% in the rural towns. How are the children doing academically? Even under short notice in Indiana, and you can see in English and language arts, they're doing better, and also in math, they're doing better. So the voucher schools are really doing well. The parental satisfaction surveys are out of the roof. The parents love it because they are empowered and they get involved in it. It's worked out really well there. What about Williamson County? You guys are great, and I'm here to tell you you're great. But do you have a way to go? Can you improve? Can you do better? The answer to that is yes. We had our guys, basic research guys, do a study on this, and just to compare you and to give you a little competitive nudge here to try to get better a little bit, look at some of the high-performing peers around the country. Chapel Hill, North Carolina, here you are. In, is this a composite ACT score on the first one? Is that right? Yeah, okay. Composite ACT score, they got it cut off the top of the deal there. The composite ACT score, and you can see the new Trier School District in Illinois is up at 27, 28, and Williamson is right at 23, which is good. It's not great. 21 is the kind of the well-accepted college preparatory readiness, and you can see how you compare with Boulder, Colorado, for example. In mathematics, you're about 22 there, compare closely to Boulder, but Chapel Hill's ahead of us there. Lake Zurich in Illinois is, and New Trier is also ahead of us. How about English? Same thing. We're doing well, 23, but we can do better when compared to other folks. So, with a rush through the data, any questions about any of that? Then Trey Moore is going to come up here and to run through a budget analysis for us where we think that the budget numbers will show that you all can save money. One of the benefits is to save money in this process. So, Trey?
Let's wait till this presentation is through, if you would, please.
Thank you, Commissioners and Mayor. Glad to be here. I'm just going to run through a budgetary analysis that for Williamson County quickly. And then the Chairman said I've got about 5 minutes here. So looking at numbers from last year, we looked at the fiscal year 2012 total expenditures as reported by the State Department of Education at $255,724,000 and change. If you break that down into per pupil funding, that comes to about $8,071 per student based on your 2012 average daily membership or enrollment. So if we look at the funding trends, what's happening in Williamson County? Over the last 5 years, you can see a steady incline in per pupil funding from about $7,500 up over, $8,000 or so. The enrollment growth tracking right along that with that. I know y'all build about 2 schools a year down here, and average close to, I guess, between 800 and 1,000 new students annually over the last 5 years. So there's obviously a great attraction to the Williamson County School District, but with that attraction comes a lot of pressure. I mean, you're having to keep up with 1,000 new students every year, and those schools cost money. With that rapid growth comes the pressures, as I say, from the Williamson County Schools website. Notice to home buyers and current residents, please be aware that with the current growth, the number of schools in our county, the Williamson County school system, will only guarantee the current school zoning for 1 year. So, I mean, every single year y'all are having to look at where the students are and how to reallocate some resources and students. Scholarships amount. So how much would a scholarship under the legislation be? What would it be worth? So the scholarship, the legislation up there is based on 100% of total BEP. So that's everything that the state contributes, and it's the local BEP portion that's required by the state, the BEP match. Using 2011-12 numbers, that comes out to be about $5,800 per pupil, based on 31,000 students or so. The cost savings. So this is where the cost savings come from. Obviously, Williamson County, y'all spend more money than you're required to by the state. You're at $8,100 per pupil. Your maximum scholarship amount is $5,800. If a student were to go to a school that didn't charge $5,800, you would keep any difference between that as well. So the way the legislation is crafted, it would be maximum 100% of BEP or tuition costs, whichever's lower. So you're looking at saving at least $2,300 per student. So we like to think of this as a public-private partnership. You've got a student in Williamson County they find a private school that better fits their needs or their parents' wishes, they can take a portion of that money and go and fill those educational needs without spending the total allotment that y'all dedicate per each student. So every time a student would leave the system to go to a private system, the difference would stay in the system. So what you see over time as the program grows, you actually see an increase in per pupil funding for the system without having to raise any tax revenues or money from somewhere else. So a great example of this, how do you relieve pressure through scholarships? Douglas County in Colorado, a big suburb of Denver, has experienced a similar situation as Williamson County, that explosion of growth, building schools left and right. So what they decided to do was have a choice scholarship pilot program. Instead of building a new school, they're going to take 500 scholarships and allow parents to go find some private education options. So what would happen if we take the Douglas County? Let's say there are 500 students in Williamson County. 250 are currently in the system. 250 are moving from Rutherford or from Davidson County. A new elementary school is going to run you between what, $12 million, $15 million. You take 250 students that are still in the Williamson County district times 2,300, you're going to save $575,000 there instead of building a new school. That brings you a total savings annually. Instead of building 2 schools, you build 1 school, and you're over $13 million. So with that, I'll wrap up quickly. I know we got about a minute left. Opportunity scholarships are public-private partnerships that work. They can ease pressure on Williamson County with the rapid growth, and they save money for taxpayers at the same time. So, that'd be it.
Thank you. We would take questions, Mr. Barfield or Mr. Moore at this point in time, okay?
Mr. Chairman, could I add one thing
Yes.
that I forgot to mention? I was in such a hurry there. Someone from Williamson County told me the other day or asked me this question. I want to clear it up. They said, can students from Davidson, if we adopt scholarship legislation, can students from Davidson County or Rutherford County take the scholarship and come to a public school in Williamson County? The answer to that is no. Both of the bills, the governor's bill and our statewide means-tested bill that TSC is for, do not allow that. The only movement's going to be intra-district. Now, a child who is in Davidson County gets a scholarship, could go to Brentwood Academy or Brentwood or BGA or any of the other private schools here, but not to any of the public schools. So I want to clear that up for the record.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions from? Yes. Eric?
Thank you. I appreciate both you gentlemen coming here tonight. Mr. Barfield, on your presentation on page number 3, the slide on the positive effect, visible effect, negative effect, what have you, can you explain what those are, positive effect, negative effect, what that data means?
Oh, yeah. Yes, the studies, there are a series of studies, and let me refer you to this. The Friedman Foundation in Indianapolis has got the study. It's called the Win-Win Solution, and that's where it is. And if you'll go online to the Friedman Foundation in Indianapolis, pull up the Win-Win, they'll give you the specific details. But the brief answer to this is they measured the academic achievement, the graduation rates, and how the children are doing, and they found a positive effect on it. Now, bear in mind that these programs have all been very limited, as the governor's program is limited, right? He's limiting it to just the failing schools and to low-income kids. So it's kind of not surprising that with limited programs, your academic results are limited as well. But they're all positive and they're no negative. So that is academic achievement measurements.
Okay. Based upon which test?
You can go through, you can take a look. There are 2, 4, 6, 8. There are 11 studies, so they're all different. But you can take a look at them and see.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Other questions from members of the school board? Yes, Mr. Gregg.
Thanks, gentlemen, for coming out. We appreciate it. My name's Mark Gregory. I'm on the school board here in Williamson County. In general, I'm probably one of the board members that's considered to look favorably upon charter schools or opportunity scholarships, as you call them. But I do want to make sure the facts are presented appropriately and fair. A couple things stood out in your presentation to me. On the ACT testing scores, we test all of our students here in Williamson County, and a lot of districts across the nation will just test the top 20, 25% of those kids, and it skews the numbers in their favor. And it didn't indicate on the slide how those districts are testing their kids.
You are very good, Mr. Gregory. That is very good, because we should have done that. All of the districts that you're compared with are like Tennessee, and they test all 100% of the kids are tested on the ACT score. So you're being compared apples to apples. We should have said that on the slide, but we didn't do it, and thanks for pointing that out.
Okay, thank you. One other question, then. On the dollar savings that were presented to us, you're taking $5,800 and subtracting that from $8,100 and change, and you're showing that as a 100% true savings per student. We've been told, and you kind of have to accept, that that's probably not a 100% savings per student. We still run the lights. We still have the water flowing, the heat's on. I mean, you know what I mean? It's not truly a 100% savings in that regard. Do you agree with that?
Well, so what you're getting at, I think the issue here is fixed costs versus unfixed. But
Yeah.
but there are studies out there, and I'd be happy to show you that fixed costs actually phase out over 5 years completely. So you're talking about a one-to-one savings at least by year 5, and in most cases a lot earlier than that. Where the savings really come in, and there's a study by Dr. Ben Scafferty from I think it's Georgia State, but he shows that these what the scholarships allow you to do is to consolidate students and get as many students in front of your best teachers as possible. So as students who are distracted or distracting, and these are the type of students that take advantage of, and they're not students that are doing great, they're not your best students, they're actually the students that whose parents recognize that there's a problem. And it could be a student in a great school, in your best school, and for whatever reason, they're just not learning in that environment. The parent will take a scholarship and send them somewhere else where they're more comfortable and where they perform better. So when that student leaves, and as the program grows, then you can consolidate, your fixed costs and range around. And the school system does that every year. I mean, we rezone in Williamson County annually. So I mean, there are ways to absorb those fixed costs, especially over time. I mean, they're not there forever.
Any other questions from members of the school board? If not,
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just want to clarify, we definitely do not rezone every year.
I was going to clarify that for you.
Yes, thank you.
They changed it to 3, and it could even be longer.
Sorry, I pulled that off the website today, so I don't know.
Yeah, you guys need to change that on your website,
Thank you, Kathy.
because you did change that. Appreciate it.
Mr. Daniels.
Okay, thank you also, gentlemen, for coming. I've already learned some things I didn't expect to learn. But I'm trying to look at it from the commission standpoint of, for any area that we may be burdened financially. And I think it was said in the newspaper, and you may have said it, Dr. Looney, I apologize if you didn't, I'm not sure where I read it, but that there may be an instance where apparently the charter schools can take out loans and borrow money, like a capital loan, and if they cannot make the payments, that burden may fall to the local county.
Yeah, and I'll defer to the charter school expert that's here on that issue, which is not us, but they're next.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're just talking
Okay.
about scholarships.
Okay, we're not going to, okay.
Thank you.
Well, then, Dr. Looney, if you're going to present, will you address that? Because I'm looking for, any expense that we might incur. Can I ask you a specific question about the Douglas County experiment? I thought that was a very interesting pilot. Those opportunity vouchers that were so successful there,
Well,
You said- yeah.
I want to stuck
Go
there.
ahead.
It's a brand-new program, so we don't have any data yet
Oh,
on that yet.
okay.
But it is an example of a suburban, a more affluent suburban area that's exploding in growth, and how they're using it to deal with this growth.
It
Kinda
reminded
mitigate
me
the
of a piece of legislation or an idea that I think maybe your coalition may be supporting, and so I was just going to ask about the mechanism of it. So they can use those dollars to apply to either a charter school, a publicly chartered school, or a private school within their county lines. Is there an income cap on that? Like is it just for certain families under a certain income? Is it for any income?
Yeah, there are two bills out there, Ms. Danner? Yeah, there are two bills out there, the governor's bill and we call it the statewide voucher bill, which we're supporting, Tennessee Federation for Children is supporting. So there are two bills. The governor's bill has an income limit, and it is the free and reduced lunch. What's the exact number? It's a very low number. In our bill, the proposal is something like $75,000. There's a lot of discussion on Capitol Hill about it. And what we're finding particularly from the rural legislators, the higher the number of the income level, it allows more people to participate in the scholarship, so that if you have, say, firemen and police and school teachers and so forth, and you have two in a family, we want the program to be robust enough and the income level to be high enough that those families can participate in these scholarships. In Indiana, they put it up at $70,000 or thereabouts, which was about 75% of their K through 12 population. I believe we have about 1 million children that are K-12 public school kids in the state. So if we had a potential of about 700,000 people, that would be the ideal thing. That is one of the things that gets negotiated out, through the legislative process. So we don't know exactly where we'll end up. But the governor's really low on the income level. We are much higher on the income level. And there's some people, I think Brent Easley hears from Students First, they may be somewhere in the middle. But in any event, that's an important issue and one that we think the legislators will address in the coming weeks.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Barnum?
Yeah, I've got Bob Arnold, County Commissioner. My question basically is, I thought, was there any impression that the DC voucher program was terminated last year? But you're using our statistics, so it's.
Yeah.
It was on the chopping block.
Yeah, it's on the chopping block, but it still existed for a number of years, 10 years or so, something like that. It was adopted in '02, and it was terminated the last year or so. But you all are very different from District of Columbia in many ways.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that was for failing school system. I would let you know that I'm on the board of directors of the Tennessee County Commissioners Association, and our association is opposed to the voucher program. I don't know if you've known that or not, but we're actively lobbying against the voucher
Is it
program.
permissible for me to ask you a question? What are the primary grounds? Maybe we can address them.
Well,
I had rather
Okay.
move this
Well,
along and hold it to what we're doing
Okay,
right now. If
and-
you would like to.
one more question, Mr. Chairman. What are the safeguards in your legislation that you won't have these private schools coming into our public schools and recruiting our student athletes?
The issue of the athletes is not dealt with in either the governor's bill or the TFC bill. That is something that's going to need to be addressed. If these bills pass, we'll see where it comes out, and that will need to be addressed by the TSSAA, the various school systems and the schools as we go forward. If the bill passes, Mr. Barnwell, the voucher scholarship program would be instituted this coming fall, and the entry points would be kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade. So this process is kind of phased in. In other words, statewide, we would anticipate more than maybe 5,000 kids statewide the first year. And then after they get in that year, then the second year, there'd be more kids in. So we've got a little time to address the athletic issue, and clearly there'll be some other issues. I know Dr. Looney probably have some things that need to be addressed, but I think we'll be able to take care of this. And the thing that's comforting to me is that we do have expertise who've been involved in these in the other states, and I think most of the questions we can get resolved. The athletic question is one we got to do some work on, roll up our sleeves and get it done.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as everyone else up here, appreciate you two gentlemen coming up here to share some of your thoughts with us. I do think you make a compelling argument in terms of, with this opportunity scholarships, in terms of helping us with the overcrowding issues that we have, and certainly with the bottom line that the county commission faces in terms of funding these schools. And that is one area where I'm particularly interested in. The question I have for you is, with the bills that are being considered, children that are in Williamson County, will they be allowed, if they participate in this program, to cross county lines? Are they able to attend a private school in Davidson?
Private.
Okay, so it's not going to be limited just to private schools in the county, okay?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
in our legislation, if a parent takes or a student takes advantage of a scholarship, they could go to any private school that would accept them in the state.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to see if, I think it was on one of the first slides, and there were a lot of numbers in the presentation, and do you guys know how many voucher programs there are in the state of Florida? Either how many students?
They have a number of programs. I would say roughly 6. I could be wrong about that, but they have one like we have proposing here. They have one called the McKay Scholarships for Special Need Kids. They have one for the failing schools, and so they have a whole series. They also have something called the Education Tax Credit, that in lieu of they don't really have vouchers down there. They have education tax credits, which is the same effect there. So they have a number of programs, and they're broad and they're robust, and so they have a dramatic positive effect because they're hitting on all cylinders, is what I would say. I don't know the exact number, but I think you can go on the Florida website and find out more about them. 76,000 kids in the voucher program in the state of Florida.
The reason that I asked, some of these numbers seem pretty remarkable, and it's not that I'm questioning the data, but I think you had said in Florida they went from being 29 to 6 based on this voucher program.
In academic achievement, yes, over the period of time.
You know what the period of time was?
Yeah. Well, it was, let's see, Bush was governor in something around 2000 or something like that, and he served for 8 years, so it was during that time frame. It may be up to now, I don't know exactly. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but generally that's the way it is.
That's a remarkable leap.
Well, we'd like to do it here. I mean, we've been in 40s for 40 years. That's not good. We can do better, we think.
A couple more questions. Mr. Barnwell, and then Mayor Anderson, I think, has.
One last question. What's to prevent, in this legislation, someone who has their children already in private school from putting their kids in public school for a month and then saying, oh, I'm going to put them back in private school? Do they get the $5,800 too?
We've never seen that happen in any other state, and the majority of states are means tested, like ours would be. And the fact of the matter is that if you have not many parents are willing to take their kid out of a private school who's doing well and use it and put them in public school for a year. And then,
Well, I'm not saying a year, just for a month.
oh, a month. Oh, in the legislation,
What-
they would have to be in school a year or one semester.
In public school for at least 1 year.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mayor Anderson.
Just 2 questions, Mr. Barfield, or I'm sure either one. Williamson County is very proud of what we have done in public education, and you've acknowledged that, and I appreciate that. Explain to me in your formula of cost savings how you will address a special needs child under your system, because I don't have the data. I'm sure the school system could get this information for us, but I do remember in years gone past, it does cost more money for a special ed child than for a traditional student, and I know that's probably not the right word, but how do you address that? Because first of all, can special needs children be involved in this process?
Yes, under the governor's bill, the special needs children are involved in the process. And my understanding, Mr. Mayor, is that they are entitled, as they leave, they're entitled to the same benefits a special needs child would receive if they were in a public school.
And you said the governor's bill, how about yours?
Our bill does not address special needs. We think that if this voucher bill gets passed, the thing to do, just like with athletics, the thing to do would be to take a look at special needs kids and come back with something in the future. Do it on it, like the McKay scholarships down in Florida that are specifically designed to deal with this issue.
Well, if I could follow up, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to get into debate because that's not what we're wanting to do, but that's a large portion of our cost basis, and I think there's not an option here in Williamson County Public School Systems to not address those issues. In fact, I have been told repeatedly in my nearly 30 years that there's a lot of people who move into our community for our special ed services, and I think that is a key point for me to think that I have to think about, because that does drive up cost, and that $8,100 expenditure that you're applying for your $5,800 to get to $2,300 savings, that's a full cost.
Yeah.
And that cost will go up if we're left with holding just educating special needs children.
Well, you're not going to see an increase in just special need kids. What you're going to see
You'll
is,
see an increased cost.
well, but on the back end, you're going to be saving for those students who don't have special needs. So that's going to go a long way to mitigate this cost.
But your cost, when you average them out, I understand your point, but someone has to deal with a special needs child and the programs. And
If there are no additional questions, we appreciate very much you coming and making your presentation to us. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
The next we have, I see Mr. Throckmorton has got here. If Matt Throckmorton would stand, and we'll have you come up to the microphone. He is with the Tennessee Charter School Association based out of Nashville. And then with him is Students First, Mr. Brent Easley with the State Director of Tennessee. So welcome, gentlemen. And again, I'll highlight the earlier comments that we laid out, kind of some of the ground rules. It's not a debate session, and we would ask you to hold your remarks to around 11, 12, 13 minutes, whatever the timekeeper says. And we're going to put your slide presentation up.
I have a PowerPoint, but if we can get that out of the way. so
Okay, there you go.
that can slide down maybe.
I am Matt Throckmorton, Executive Director at Tennessee Charter School Association, and this is Brent Easley. Brent has some a prepared presentation, so we'll just let him jump into it and go from there.
I just want to say we appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. And let me start by saying that we want to be a resource for you. And if you have questions and we don't have the information that you need right now, we commit to having that back to you in a timely manner. Quality charter schools are good options for many families in Tennessee, and that's how I want to frame this conversation, that this policy is beneficial for the state on the whole. I applaud you for the excellent job you're doing in your system here, and the results are clear for your system. And I'm here to say these types of schools do provide much-needed options in some parts of our state for children that are trapped in schools that are not as high quality as the schools here and are not making significant progress in their current school. Charter schools are public schools with the flexibility to innovate. In exchange for this autonomy, they're held to strict accountability measures. They're approaching 50 charter schools in Tennessee right now. None of those are in your county, I believe, though I did see a story recently about an applicant, and I'm not clear on the specifics there. There are quality charter schools in our area, though. There are quality charter operators like Nashville Prep in Nashville that show a clear benefit as soon as you walk in the door. If you've not had an opportunity to visit one of these local charter schools like Nashville Prep, I'd encourage you to do that. Nashville Prep is located on the TSU campus and the Avon Williams campus downtown. Pointing back to the accountability measures, this accountability allows the option of closing a charter school if it's not meeting the needs of the children there. And that's the important thing. Are we as a state allowing parents the options to do what's best for their child, and are we holding these schools accountable as well? The ultimate goal is to replicate what high-performing charter schools are doing, so Tennessee can make an impact where those choices are needed, and that none are susceptible to closure. There's legislation pending before the General Assembly to address the way charter schools are authorized or the appeals process, and I'll turn it over to Matt on that and for any other comments.
Thanks. So charter schools, I think we all get it. Charter schools are public schools, so that means we have certified teachers, we provide special education, we have ELL, we take the TCAP, we do everything in that manner, just as any public school in the state of Tennessee. The concept of how a charter school came about was really a frustration within the traditional system of education professionals primarily wanting to exercise their profession and do things differently. And it's, I don't want to cause you any grief, but in a large system, it's really difficult to have that kind of autonomy. And so it began a discussion in the 1970s about it having a formal process that would enable these educators to do something differently. And in 1992, they had the very first state that jumped into that, and that was the state of Minnesota. And Tennessee jumped into it in 2002. When Tennessee climbed into it, we had the strictest law in the nation, so we just barely got over the hump of passing a law. But the law was incredibly strict, and it was limiting in which students could actually go. And so in the state of Tennessee, only students who had personally failed TCAP or Gateway were able to go. And then in 2005, they changed that to where students who were also zoned to a school that was on the high priority list. So the entire focus of the charter schools in the state of Tennessee has been on academically struggling students. Then in 2010, we were successful in changing that to students that were qualified via free or reduced price lunch. And then in 2011, Governor Haslam put into place that you could have open enrollment so that any student can go. And going back to our original law, with all of our charter schools, almost all of them, 48 of them, 45 are located in Memphis and Nashville. And what that's created is kind of this view as to what a charter school is. And we know these charter schools, I'm sure you look at the data and you see that we have some incredibly high-performing charter schools, and you know that we have some charter schools that have struggled. But you see this kind of this model or this flavor that exists just in those two cities. And what we, the association, would like to see in the coming years is the true manifestation of what a charter school could be throughout the entire state. And it's not just the inner city struggling urban model, but some of the best and highest performing public schools in America are suburban charter schools. And my background actually comes from another state where I was very engaged in opening up several dozen of these, and some of them just incredibly high performing. And the concept is that you will have students that are just kind of getting along. I know for my daughter, we opened up a charter school and we put my daughter in a charter school. Academically, she was doing a little bit better in reading and she was struggling at math. And after 1 year at the charter school that we opened for her, she continued to progress in reading and she'd actually completely caught up in math and she was moving ahead. And that's not an uncommon story whatsoever. And you'll find that charter schools in the suburban model, so something like Williamson County could fit incredibly well. But I know that it's new concept, and so there's a lot of pushback. With the association, what we do not do is we don't go into a community and we incubate and put charter schools right in your backyard, whether you like it or not. And actually, when groups approach us about doing a charter school, we'll give them a couple of answers. But anybody who asks us too many questions demonstrates they probably don't know what they're doing, and we kind of shy away from them. The process of going through the application itself is a real grinding process, and it's a real screening process. And if an applicant is able to get through that, they demonstrate the ability to actually run a charter school, which is something that we want. Brent mentions the legislation, House Bill 702. The first version of that passed House Education Subcommittee 2 weeks ago, two Tuesdays ago, and it passed with a 6-3 vote. And it's politics, right? The sausage making of politics. It passed in a version that what it allowed is direct applications in both Memphis and Nashville. And what that meant is that applicants would not come to the LEA. They would bypass the LEA and they would go straight to the State Board of Education and apply for the charter. The State Board would then handle the whole process, which from start to finish would take potentially about 120 days. And from that, there's been a lot of pushback from that. There's been a lot of discussions. We're drafting right now an amendment that's going to change that. And what it'll end up being is a statewide process, but it will not include a bypass. All applications will go to the LEA first, but if they're denied by the LEA, then what will happen is that they will have a different process at the state. We will develop a panel that will have a real expertise around charter schools so that they can have a real strong focus in the application process. And that's something that's worked very well in a number of other states, but rest assured, all applicants, to include the one application that you have in front of you, will come to the LEA first and go through the process that you have here. So that's, and that bill, we got here just a little bit late, because we're still doing some drafting, going back and forth on some drafts of that. And we anticipate that that bill would actually be voted on not tomorrow, but the following Tuesday. It may be amended into a form tomorrow so that everybody will have a chance to publicly read it. At least that's the plan right now. And I think that's all I have for you on that.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. I'll take questions from members of the school board first. Do you have any? Yes.
Now you turned it off. Well, it was, so you turned it off.
You made reference to a charter application that we've received in Williamson County Schools, but you don't seem to be familiar with that application. So how does that work? I mean, what's your relationship to people that can just anyone apply for a charter school? I mean, explain this to us.
Yeah, so I've actually met the gentleman who put that forward. I've not read the application. The process is, and we, the association, put this into law 2 years ago because there needs to be a very thoughtful, deliberative process of making a determination as to who gets approved. What we put into place is a letter of intent. So 60 days before your deadline, which is April 1st, you have to submit a letter of intent. And the letter of intent, I'm sure you saw it, it's incredibly simple. It's 2 pages, but it lets you know they're thinking about it, a little bit about them, basic concepts, what students, those types of things. And so it gives the LEA a 60-day, 2 months to really kind of get some runway as to what's going to happen with it. On the association, we have a little, what we call a charter starter workshop that we'll hold once or twice a year, and it's really the basics. And again, we don't give them too much information. I mean, I've drafted a whole bunch of charter schools myself, and you know, the strength in doing a charter school is really getting through that process. And so we'll answer a couple of questions, but we expect the applicant to do all of the heavy lifting, all of the research, and it's a very daunting process to get through. So you'll get that application, I'm presuming. Again, I haven't read their application. I'm not certain if they're going to go through with it. And then you'll have 90 days to go through that and make your first determination.
Is the funding on a charter school such as that the same as for the Opportunity Scholarship funding, $5,800? Is that what you would project?
I don't know what it'll be here. I'm guessing it'll be a little bit more. When they put into place the law in 2002, it was put into place by a Democratic governor, head of the Senate, head of the House, and it's now Republicans that run all of those, and they all have completely agreed, so it's very bipartisan. Charter school students are public students, and therefore they're entitled to 100% of the funding. And so what the state will do is they'll send out a formula, or they have a formula, they'll send out a number to you if approved and before this charter school actually opens. And what they'll do is they'll look at all the revenue sources and all of the state dollars, and then the local revenue, they'll simply divide by the number of students. That's a per pupil, however many students they have, that's what they'll receive there. And then for the federal dollars, it is for applicable dollars. So if it's Title I school, then they'll receive Title I dollars. If they're not, they won't. Special education, that one's a little, I won't get into the weeds on that one, but our districts handle special education a little bit differently. I'm sure Dr. Looney knows all about that. But on average, like in Memphis and Nashville, if you go to the state report card, it will show an average expenditure of about $11,000. Our charter schools will receive about $9,000. So there's about $2,000 of revenue that for whatever reason are not applicable to a charter school. And so roughly whatever your numbers are, you can estimate probably 75 to 80% of that would follow the student to the charter school.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of the school board?
My name's Vicki Vogt, and I'm on the school board. Oh, thank you. Hi, my name's Vicki Vogt, and I'm on the school board. I have a question about the accountability that you talked about in the beginning. If a charter school is found to not be performing adequately, who makes the determination of how long they're allowed to operate? And because I'm a little confused as to what that accountability, where it actually funnels, where it gets determined.
You folks would make that decision here in the case of Williamson County. And our accountability is the same as what y'all, so you take the TCAP in the spring, and then it generates the priority list, the focus list, the reward list. If a charter school is on the priority list, so the bottom 5%, they are then eligible to be closed. And then that's a discussion that you'll have with the school. As the association, our job, we don't go in and close charter schools. And so you have a situation in Memphis where they chose to keep them open for various reasons. That's what the district wanted to do, so we supported that. In Nashville, they wanted to close down Smithson Craighead Middle School, so we supported that. And the district will have different reasons that they do that. One of the things that they took into consideration is, in Memphis, is that about 80% of the students at that one particular school, if they had closed that charter school, 80% of the students would be assigned to their zone schools that were actually performing substantially lower. And so they recognize this isn't the best option, the charter school better pick it up. But for those students, you would actually head into a lower performing situation. But again, that's a district decision.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sherry Hammond, also part of the school board. Just a quick follow-up on that. For that time period then, if a school is not performing a charter school, is it 2 years that they go through 2 years of testing and then a determination can be made?
There's still a 2-year element to it. Our law used to be that every year before they received the waiver from Arnie Duncan, it used to be that every single year they would generate the priority list. So it used to be that if a charter school was on the priority list 2 years in a row, actually if they failed 2 years in a row, so the first year a target, the second year they would then go on the priority list. So failing 2 years in a row, they were then eligible to be closed. What they changed now is that that list is coming out every 3 years, and so if a charter school is on that list every third year that it comes out, they're then eligible. There's been a lot of discussion about the two, and that's because the new accountability system that they received the waiver on allows 2 years of data or more, and so that's where a little bit of the confusion. So some of our charter schools have 2 years of data, and they were eligible to be considered for that list.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of the school board? Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you being here tonight. I'm Eric Welch. I'm with the school board. I was wondering if you could tell me, are charter schools required to accept all applicants? Yes. Okay. And then, since they are public schools, how is transportation to the school dealt with? Is it the responsibility of the parent, or are we required to provide transportation to the school? The district is not. In the application process, it's one of the requirements is that the charter school will identify what they're going to do. If they say no, then that's the end of the discussion. If they're going to, then they'll identify how they do that. And then per state law, there's a little more flexibility allowed to charter schools just functionally. So what you'll see is like a regular transportation plan. You have a bus, 45 minutes, they'll have 15, 20 stops. What they'll allow for charter schools is that they may ask the parents to like carpool to 2 or 3 locations, and then the bus will just hit those. So a little bit more flexible. If they choose to exercise a transportation plan, then there is a formula, and the district will need to send the transportation dollars to the charter school, which in Memphis, I think it's about $300 per pupil. In Nashville, it's about $500 per pupil. Okay. You mentioned that charter schools have been in existence in Tennessee. I believe you said that we were the second state to enter into it, behind Minnesota? No. 2002, we passed a law. First charter school was 2003. We were like the 35th state or so. Okay. To actually pass a law. So 2003, Tennessee entered into it. Yeah, we had our first charter schools open that year. Okay, thank you. And where did those charter schools open? Was that in Memphis or Nashville, or? One in Nashville, and I think 3 in Memphis. Okay. How did those charter schools, is their performance compared to the public school in the same area? They have done, as a cohort, they have done really well. Credo, so very famously Credo, which is out of Stanford University, they were in the movie Waiting for Superman, and they kind of just glossed over the statement that according to Credo, only 17% of charter schools outperformed. Credo has come into Tennessee the last 2 years, and they pointed out that over 50% of our charter schools outperform. And then we have another large percentage that are making academic gains, but they're kind of plus or minus with the district. And then we have, about 20% of the charter schools that are underperforming. Okay, but is that comparing like-minded students, similar economic backgrounds, two-parent households, what have you? Yeah, what they do is they do the classic, I'm not a statistician, but they do a classic matched pair study. So they'll find a student, student X with these characteristics, then they'll find student Y. Student X, both of them came from like the same neighborhood. One of them went to a charter school, the other one didn't, and then they just measure the progress there. Okay. So they're trying to identify the gains of similarly situated students. But then the charter school, it is an application process, so you would have to have an involved parent in order reasonable assumption that any student at a charter school has involved parents and that they've gone through the application process. Is that a fair statement?
You would be amazed at how many students actually call up themselves and just, they hear about it and they want to go to it. So yes, we do have a lot of parents. We have a lot of non-traditional family situations in Memphis and Nashville, so we have a lot of guardians, grandparents, and things of that nature. And I respond that way because there's this presumption that charter schools are doing well because all the busybody, really assertive parents are showing up. And we get a lot of them that are pretty assertive that way. A back way of answering that is our charter schools have a struggle of how to get their parents involved because the average parent doesn't have a GED or a high school diploma. And so you can't take a lot of these parents and put them in a classroom and help them with reading and writing. And so we get a lot of involvement, but we have most of our students are first time. If they go to college, they'll be first time college in their family.
Okay, but to your point then, it's either a motivated parent, motivated guardian, or motivated student in order to get into it. So they're taking the kind
They
of the
want to
initial
be there.
step.
Yeah.
And what I was going to add was I mentioned Nashville Prep as an example of a charter school that's local here. And one of the things they do is that the people at the school and parents who have students that are already attending there go and knock on doors in neighborhoods to spread the word about the school. So these parents who are active go out into the community to reach back.
Recruiting others.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned an appeal board for charter schools if it doesn't pass the LEA, that it would not go to the state board, but it would go to an appeals board. Can you speak to that a little bit more? I'm not as familiar with that as I probably should be.
Well, you shouldn't be because it hasn't been, the draft language hasn't gone out. But one of the things that we have wanted in all this, there's an organization that right now, Williamson County, since you don't have charter schools, you're probably not familiar with. It's called NACSA. It's a National Association of Charter School Authorizers. And there's two national groups. One is the National Alliance. They're Kool-Aid drinkers like us. They love charter schools. They're all charter school background. NACSA, on the other hand, their background, they're all school district people. They're all school districts, an association of school districts that oversee charter schools. And they get together and talk about how do you support quality charter schools, how do you close down bad charter schools, what are best practices. And NACSA has a set of standards that will just bring about the best results, where you'll end up with the best charter schools and you'll close down the low-performing charter schools. And one of their best practices is to create an independent panel that is just focused on charter school authorizing. So it's not one of 50 things that they do, but it's the one thing that they do so they can really develop the skill set to support good ones, close bad ones.
And who would appoint that independent panel?
That will be up for fair discussion, but typical panels that are created by the state legislature include appointments by like the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate and such.
Okay, so would they all be politically appointed, or is there local representation where the populace would have a voice in choosing?
We're adding some local, not by like a vote, but we're looking at like the School Boards Association appointing a couple of individuals to the board so that they can definitely have a say in that panel.
So the TSBA?
Yeah.
Williamson County Schools does not belong to the TSBA.
You don't belong to them?
We do not.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
Thank you. If
We're
we,
working on that, though.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your time.
if we have no more questions, I'd like to go to the members of our committee.
Oh, I'm not
Okay.
on your committee.
It's all right.
Okay.
Commission.
Okay. Thank you very much for your depth of knowledge and for sharing it with us. I just have a question. You said some of the highest performing charter schools were suburban. Can you give us an example in Tennessee and maybe one outside of Tennessee that's a highly successful suburban charter school?
We don't have any suburban charter schools in Tennessee, but if you,
Okay.
probably the most, I don't hear a lot of complaints about it, with data. Everybody can have a problem with data, but U.S. News and World Report, every year they'll put out, and they have a pretty well-defined process that they'll develop that. They'll develop the top high schools in America. Hume Fogg is on it. Martin Luther King is on it. Every year they'll have 10 to 15 plus charter schools, and those will tend to be suburban charter schools.
Okay, great.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have any questions, other questions?
Commissioner Barnwell, you're saying that the loan question is for them? Oh, okay. I had asked a question earlier, maybe you hadn't come in yet, about if a charter school can borrow money, take out like a capital loan to get their school going, and if they fail to make the payments on that loan, does the burden fall to the local county school?
It does not.
Okay.
As part of a loan process, they would have to get some type of a guarantor, a signator, or a credit enhancement, and then it would go through the regular banking process. But ultimately, If it completely falls through, then the bank, just as with any other loan that don't work out, the bank's responsible.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate you making the presentation. Who? Yes, please.
There we go. Just so I can get my hands around it, if I went out and wanted to open a charter school and went through the, I think you said 2-year process to get it done, get it approved, and then I opened a school with 50 students or 100 students, so I can do the math in my head. And if we're talking about our money in the county, you're talking about $8,000. So do the charter schools charge more than that? Can they run that on $800,000 a year and pay the teachers and rent and stuff like that? Or can they have a tuition of $10,000 in the school?
No tuition.
There's no
And
tuition. So
part of the process, when you get this application, I'm sure, Dr. Looney's already going through this, you're not going to just like slap it on your table and kind of look at it. What they're going to do is put together a review committee that will include a curriculum expert and a budget expert and a special education expert and every single different expertise that would go into running one of these schools. And then they'll take the application, break it up, give them the appropriate part. And we have some applications that have budgets that are just complete la-la land. Probably shouldn't say it that way, it's not very professional, but it'll be your job to go through that and ensure that they have realistic numbers, they have realistic expectations as far as salary and staffing and all those things, that they have a realistic expectation of what their facility is going to be. They're going to have to find their own facility. If you don't feel that their budget is reality, then you note as such and you deny it. If you feel that their budget is realistic, it supports also the academic programs that they're talking about, then you give it a high score and move on with it.
do they have athletic
Most of our
offer that sort of thing too?
Most of our schools do not, and as they get a little bit larger and more mature with their student population, again, most of our schools right now, the kids are coming to us 3 or 4 grade levels behind, so our schools are just completely focused on remediation. But some of our schools, as they get a little bit further down the road, they're adding like a track team or some of those different things. We do have a little bit of irony, but just for full disclosure, one of our charter schools down in Memphis has a football team that great scores. Smiths and Craighead Middle School, which was closed here in Nashville, they started out their very beginning year with a football team. And when all that happened, everybody, no one's going to tell them how to run their business, but we saw that as a lack of focus on academics, and maybe they should have put a little bit more focus on academics. But to your point, we don't have any athletically focused charter schools.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your comments. We'll ask Dr. Looney now.
Thank you. I want to commend the speakers prior to me. They did an excellent job in my perspective, and I really believe that we all have the same interest at heart, and that is the benefit of boys and girls. I guess the question becomes, how do you get from point A to point B, specifically in Williamson County? And so I'd like to contextualize my comments by stating this. We're having the conversation right now that we're supposed to be having. Several years ago, our state applied for a Race to the Top grant. And as most of you know, the impetus of Race to the Top was President Obama's notion that No Child Left Behind was not working. And let's see if I can get this hyperlink to work, was not working. And therefore, there was a concerted effort to change the way we do business and add.
Yesterday, I proposed a few ways to bring our schools into the 21st century. I called for a doubling of our investment in charter schools so that students and parents have choices within the public school system, because I believe in public schools, even as we give states the tools to hold them accountable.
So I just wanted to play that snippet to kind of contextualize the conversation that we're having in the state of Tennessee is consistent with the president's version of changing No Child Left Behind and going to a grant application. In fact, our application in Tennessee, which we received $500 million in the state of Tennessee in order to improve education. And the premise that our application was based on, I bolded a couple of points, that we would alter state law to facilitate an expansion of charters and choices in Tennessee for public school children. And I'm not going to read a lot of this because we have a limited amount of time, but I want to go to the bottom of it. I want to contextualize what Race to the Top has done for Williamson County, because we're talking about how these reform efforts might help us in Williamson County. The state got $500 million. Williamson County schools received $331,500 over a 4-year period. I'm told by my mathematicians that that's 0.010% 0.07% is what we got from the Race to the Top grant application in Williamson County. And our student population represents about 3.5% of the entire public school population in the state of Tennessee. So a lot of the conversations that we're having have broad implications across the state. But as you think about what our positioning is as it relates to Race to the Top funding and what we're doing, we have very, very little benefit from the Race to the Top. I want to talk a little bit about the research, but I also want to tell you that the truth of it is you can find research to support any position. There's an old saying that goes that numbers never lie, but liars always use numbers. And so what we did is we took the research and we've only given you in your binder research that came from an unbiased source, such as the U.S. Department of Ed or some research organization that has no ties to pro-public, no ties to pro-voucher or pro-charter. And so I thought that was important. There are a number of research studies that are located behind tab number 2 in your book. There are 4 that we've included. The first one is one of the studies that Matt talked about. That's the Credo study. And what happened with the Credo study, they analyzed the results of students' academic gains across a total of 16 states and in 2009. And then there's a few other studies. I've included them in my presentation materials for you to look at. I'm not going to go through each of the studies, but I think that you would find those studies to be reputable. And then finally, the last document behind tab number 2 is a document from the National Conference of State Legislators. There's a link provided for you. And I want to talk about one specific portion of that study because it relates specifically to Williamson County. The research tells us that there are mixed results for charters and vouchers across America. Some of them are really good. There's some really high-functioning charters and some really high-functioning voucher schools. Just as there are some very dysfunctional ones. The first study that I mentioned, I'll go back to, they indicated that 17% of the students that participated in the charter program received a better education as a result of going to a charter school. 37%, their education suffered or declined, the value of their education. And then the rest of them, there was no noticeable difference. But most importantly, in several of the studies, there's research that indicates that high-performing kids in high-performing districts don't do particularly well if they switch to an alternative learning mechanism, such as a charter or a voucher. And there's one of the outcomes there. That comes from this study, National Conference of State Legislators, and what most people would consider to be a fairly unbiased group. What does the data say? I want to talk about the national data, but I also want to zoom in on Tennessee data and Williamson County data because you're interested in Williamson County. So here it is. The Credo study that I mentioned before, 17% of kids improved or showed better results academically, 37% got worse, and 46% stayed about the same. That chart is in your folder behind tab number 1, I believe, that says data. This actually is some information that I took from the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools, which was one of the organizations that was previously cited. This is a dashboard that's available on their website. This is national data as it relates to AYP They do not have 2011-12 data posted on their website yet, but this shows you what the data looks like over time and the performance. So the blue line obviously represents the number of schools with AYP goals. Yellow is the schools making AYP, charter schools that is, and the black line represents charter schools failing to make AYP. It appears to me that the trend data is going in the wrong direction from a national perspective based on the information that's provided on this website. This is AYP data for charter schools specific to Tennessee. So in 2010-11, there were 21 charter schools that had AYP data. Of those 21, or 28%, those charter schools made AYP, and 71.4% did not make AYP. AYP, as you might remember, means making growth trajectories and performance improvement, or performance improvements. That is higher than the national AVA data, so Tennessee is doing better than the national trend data as it relates to charter schools, and I commend them for that. This data represents ACT data for charter schools and for all public schools across the nation. The blue line is for all public schools. The ACT graph trend data says that ACT data is relatively flat. I will tell you, the last data report they have is 2008, 2009. There is an uptick on the national data if you go into the more current years, but that's all they had to present. And so you can see the yellow line represents ACT performance across the nation for all charter schools that have kids taking the ACT. To contextualize it to Williamson County, our current average is a 23.1. I would like to point out that one of the previous presenters talked about ACT scores across the nation. And so my smartphone allowed me to do a little bit of research. And I just want to share this with you, not to insult the presenters, but to try to contextualize the information that we have. The high school that was quoted as having a 27 ACT score, their average teacher compensation, the average teacher salary for that in that high school is $107,000 a year. It's a district with one high school, and they spend in excess of $20,000 per student. I'm proud to know that we have a high school that's a charter school that's performing that well. We spend in the bottom 1/3 of the state of Tennessee as it relates to per pupil expenditures. Our teachers don't make $50,000 a year on average. And so I'm not sure it's fair to compare one data point unless you're considering all the data points. Once again, I'm not disparaging the previous presenters. I just am trying to point out that sometimes you got to peel the onion back a little bit to see the whole picture. And if I represent something falsely, I hope that they help me correct my errors. I do not intend to do so. This is data that you may remember me reporting, but I want to contextualize why do we want charter schools or vouchers in Tennessee, and specifically in Williamson County. And so it's a true statement to say that we can improve. We certainly can improve. I stand before you tonight to report to you that I am absolutely committed to continuous improvement, and we're not where we need to be yet. The board has a strategic plan that I am attached to, and that's my mission every single day, is to accomplish the strategic plan that this community gave us. But at the same time, I think it's important to pause for a minute to say, look at what we're doing. And so I share this chart with you to report to you, did you know that the special education students in this district outperform the state all students category? Our disabled students are outperforming the average students in Tennessee. And I think that's representative of the good work that's happening in our classrooms across Williamson County. So that's reading language arts. You can see the dark blue line is the state's performance on TCAP, grades 3 through 8 in reading. The light green line is our students of poverty, which is above the all students category. The light blue thin line is our students with disability. The ethnic line, our minority population is performing better than the state average, and our ELL population is right at the state average. The same information is there for you as it relates to mathematics in grades 3 through 8. We are not there with our students with disability, but we're really, really close to the state average for all students, not just students with disabilities, which once again is remarkable to me. I also want to share a little bit of data to contextualize how we're doing on AP, the advanced placement coursework, relative to the state and to the nation. And so you can see those three categories and how we've improved over time. You can see that in 2010, we had more students taking the exam than the state average or the national average, but our success rate wasn't as high. But you can see what's happened in 2011. We went from 14.7% scoring a 3 or higher to 29%, and then this last year to 32.7%. So we're making huge gains there. I have compared Williamson County school data to charter school data across the entire state in aggregate form. So Williamson County's math scores are the blue line, the reading scores for Williamson County are the red line, and then our sister charter schools all together across the state, the performance is indicated in green and purple. Now I'm breaking it down at the school level. And so each one of the stars represents one of our schools that houses 3 through 8 kids. The gray dot circle is Hamilton County Board of Education's charter schools. The next one is Memphis. The next one is Nashville Metro, and then Shelby County. And so you can see how all the charter schools are performing in comparison. I need to hurry up, right? In comparison to the charter schools in the state. You can see that some of the charter schools are doing pretty well. This is the Tennessee report card from the most previous year, WCS's grade in comparison to all the charter schools' grades across the state. That's growth data. They're doing better on growth. Reward, focus, and priority schools. Tennessee has 169 reward schools, 83 high priority schools, in other words, failing schools. Charter schools have 5. Williamson County has 0. I want to real quickly get to the budget. I do not agree with the notion that we can save money in Williamson County if we go to charters or vouchers. Our data indicates something different, and I provided a range for you because the truth of it is we have no idea to tell you exactly how much money we would lose and or gain because it depends on what grades, what schools kids leave or don't come to or transfer from. So we have a range. If 25 students went to a charter school, if they all came from different schools, the blue trend line would show you the revenue shift. The red trend line would be if they came from one specific school. So if we had a charter school with 250 students, which is the average size of a charter school in Tennessee as I understand it, the range of revenue shift from public schools to charter schools would be between 1.3 million and 2.1 million. Reduction in enrollment. This is a very odd phenomenon. As you reduce your enrollment, the cost per pupil actually goes up. And you know we get funded and our monies are allocated cost per pupil. So our fixed costs, the bond payments on the schools, the electric bills, all those things, that's not a variable cost, that's a fixed cost. And so because we have fewer students to divide between, the fixed cost actually goes up per pupil, and you can see what happens. It goes up more than $500 per pupil if we just had one charter school. And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy because what happens as your cost per pupil goes up, so does your allocation to the charter school that you provide because they get 100% of your per pupil expenditure. So the more students they enroll, the more it costs us to operate, therefore the more money they get from the locals. I provided some different scenarios if charter schools represent 25, 100 students, or 250 students. I won't go through all that. This is the potential total cost increase of students leaving for charter schools. Once again, I've given you worst case, best case scenarios for your consideration. There's a lot of data in your folders. I don't have enough time to go through all of it, but I am more than willing to meet with you individually or in another setting to give you more information. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. We appreciate, first, you and the staff putting together the packets that we have. It's a very informative thing. Now, if we have any questions from the school board, we'll take them. Okay, from the county, from our committee, from the county commissioners.
Dr. Looney, I'm a little confused over the numbers that were being thrown out, because like the charter school people seem to think that we'd only lose 80% of our 8,000, if I heard that correctly, but I always understood it'd be the per pupil cost we're spending. I didn't understand where they were going with that 80% number. Did you understand it?
No, sir, I do not understand that. The law as I read it.
Was I correct in evaluating that they were saying only 80%?
I don't want to speak for them. I can
Okay.
speak to the law, and the law is actually provided behind one of the tabs for you, and the law says that the allocation is the 100%.
Okay.
We can't even keep administrative costs back. It's 100% of ADM.
Okay, because it was, one thing that was mentioned was the transportation would have to be added later if they provided school transportation. That was very confusing, but I didn't want to.
They're fine folks, and I don't want to disparage them in any way. I'm sure that they were looking at a different numeric or a metric than I was.
Any other questions?
I just have a question. So, Dr. Looney, am I correct in assuming then that you are worried about charter schools coming to Williamson County? That it's a budgetary worry?
Well, as the superintendent of schools, I'm always worried about change and managing change. And so, yes, ma'am, I am worried about the potential financial consequences of having a charter operator in Williamson County. If you just look at it from, a principal's perspective, it's one more principal that's divided amongst the same number of students that you have in the district. So we're giving them money to operate a separate school, and frankly, this body and the school board wrestle quite a bit about money and how far our dollars go. So you're splitting the monies that we have even further. And so I do have that concern. More importantly, I'm concerned because, once again, at best, the research is very mixed about the academic benefit of going to a charter school. And so from my perspective and from the research that I believe to be relevant and reliable research, I just don't know how it would be a good fit for this district. Having said that, under current Tennessee law, the good news is this: you don't have to decide. The board has that legal responsibility, and it's going to have to wrestle with that question if we get an application. So they're going to struggle through it, I'm sure, but I am worried about it.
I appreciate that. I was just having a hard time understanding, you hired the lobbyists, and so the indications are that you're worried. And if we have a superior product, and we do, as you know, I'm a fellow customer of the public schools, and if we have a superior product, then I'm not sure why we're worried a charter school from an academic standpoint would fail in this county. But if your concern is budgetary, I kind of struggle with that. We've heard both sides of the budget argument tonight. One says we'll save money, one says we won't. But if charter schools supply an opportunity for children and for parents, and your concern is budgetary, then I would think that the taxpayers of Williamson County would question your priorities.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, so let me respond. First, I want to clarify what the purpose of the lobbyists are. The lobbyists are not working to defeat charter or voucher legislation. They're working to help us maintain local control. As an example, at the last board meeting, the board took an official position that impacts this body, and that's what the Financial Control Act, which I believe the county commission missions across the state are opposed to. In addition, the lobbyists are advocating on behalf of the school board to get the same flexibility to the public schools in Williamson County, because we're achieving high, that charter schools have. We don't have that same flexibility. So that's the purpose of the lobbyist. As it relates to financial priorities and academic priorities, I want to relay this information. We have about 100 students or so, give or take, that go to the virtual high school in Union County. It too is an alternate source of education. We are contributing about $500,000 a year out of our current budget for that. It is one of the lowest ranked achieving public schools in the entire state. They're your students. They're residents of Williamson County. And we're using local tax dollars to give them a subpar public education. And so my interest is to make sure that all the boys and girls in Williamson County that call Williamson County schools their home get the best possible education that I can provide them.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. If there are no other questions, do we have one?
Yes, sir. I know we're pressed for time. Dr. Looney, listening to the two presentations this evening, from my perspective, it seems the voucher program may be a more palatable option for us. Would you agree with that compared to the vouchers? I mean, to the charter schools, excuse me?
I don't know, because I think the school board has to take each one of those issues and think about how it will impact the families that they're charged with serving. As I said before, there are good charter schools, there are good voucher programs in America. The question is, will it work here? And my position is we need to be very, very careful with the promise of spending fewer dollars than we already do, given that we're spending in the bottom third of the state to continue producing a superior product.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. We appreciate you coming and making the presentation. We certainly appreciate members of the school board being here. This is something this committee felt like we needed to do to try and educate the commission as much as we possibly could. We understand the the breadth of the problem or the issue that you have to deal with. We understand it is your decision. We simply wanted as much information from a body as we could get from it. We certainly are not infringing on your area. And Dr. Looney, thanks again. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Proper motion, second. All in favor? Thank you.